Welcome to Class OLC 40. This is week 7, class 24, unit 3, and we are on assignment 39, which is the last assignment of unit 3, and I am Jillian Percy. Here are all the ways to reach me. Right now I'm in the studio. If you want to call, 1-800-465-7144. The office is 1-800-667-3703. I'm usually there for another hour or so after the session ends. You can email me a question at jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. If you want to listen to a recording again, it is on YouTube, capital G, capital P, ERCY space, capital W, AHSA. And you can also send your student work, student work at NNEC. I believe it's ONCA. Okay. So if you do send it to me directly, that's fine. I just kind of route it through there. This way we just have it on record that you've submitted the work. So it's just kind of for your own benefit, really. All right, our last assignment, journal entry, success in the workplace. This is going to be worth 10 marks. You are to share your thoughts on how the ability to read, write, listen, and speak are all important communication skills if you are to succeed in the workplace. Your response will be a paragraph containing at least 5 sentences. Submit both a rough copy and a final copy of your paragraph. This is the overall rubric for the last 3 assignments. It's not super detailed. It's just very, very generic. So we're just going to talk about what I expect. So I've noticed the journals seem to be the hardest part for some people. And I think, this is just my guess, but I think it's because it's such an open-ended question and it's so vague that people just really aren't sure what on earth do they want. So it's called a journal because it's intended to be a self-reflective type of writing, almost like a diary, but a diary you're doing for someone else in a sense. I am so aware that this is not a type of writing that everyone's comfortable doing, especially if someone's then going to be looking at it and grading it. That is a lot of pressure, okay? However, if you have gotten this far in the course, I am confident that you can do it well, right? We are so close to the end of this course. If you've handed all the assignments, you're doing great. So one big way to try and handle a question that seems really open-ended is basically try and narrow it down a little bit so it seems a bit more approachable. So I'm going to try and help you with that. So first of all, think about what is the overall purpose of these learning journal assignments? There's several overall purposes to any kind of a learning journal, but these ones specifically, we're trying to give you an opportunity to reflect on your literacy progress throughout the course. We're trying to encourage you to see how reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills that we practice in this course are also helpful to you in real life, like the workplace. We're trying to help you create personal literacy goals, to encourage you to self-monitor whether you're meeting those goals. We also want you to see your progress in your reading and writing skills as you complete these assignments. We also are trying to make sure we're giving you reading and writing assignments that you will actually find useful in your life. For example, creating the resumes and doing the cover letters and showing you how to do the job hunt stuff, right? Hopefully that stuff is actually going to be useful. So that's what we're aiming for, is that this course doesn't just seem like, oh, this is the school thing that I've got to finish, but that it's like, oh, okay, this is just trying to give me some tools in my toolbox for stuff that I'm going to have to do anyways, right? Unless you're working in like a lighthouse somewhere all by yourself, even if you're doing nighttime security, for example, you're still probably having to talk to the people that are working there at night. Maybe you're talking to some of the other people that are working night security when you're changing shifts. You probably still have a boss. There's still probably a staff manual and posters. Even when you do a job that's pretty alone or maybe even lonely, there's still reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills, okay? So that's kind of what we're trying to focus on here. If you want to, one way to tackle this assignment is to sort of take 1 or 2 of these and sort of help them become a focus for the paragraph to help it become less open-ended and more specific. This is kind of the big one here. Oh, hang on, well, let me select it. Oh, there we go. Okay. This is kind of the big one we're really looking at this time, is reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills and how they're helpful to you in real life, okay? So the workplace is what the journal wants you to look at. The workplace, literacy skills, doesn't quite say you, but sort of imply, because that's the focus of most of this course, and how these things kind of interact together, basically. Okay, these are the 6 main literacy skills: reading, writing, listening, speaking, viewing media, and representing media. For the purposes of this question, they're really focusing on these 4. Okay. Now, if you were in certain types of job, like maybe you're working in like a TV station, well, then viewing and representing media might be a little bit more important. These 4 are really, really like the core basic literacy skills that you're just going to use everywhere, talking to your children, with your partner, at your work. So, what kinds of communication skills are needed in the workplace? Different types of work can require very different types of communication skills. Someone who works in sales, for example, might need very good speaking and listening skills. Someone who works in a newspaper might need excellent writing skills. Someone who works at a publishing company where they create books might need great reading skills. Certain professions can lean really heavily on 1 or 2 types of communication skills. But almost all jobs involve some sort of communication with people, either in person, electronically, or digitally. And they almost involve some sort of product, an email, a phone call, letter, presentation, looking at a new software manual or creating a new software manual, discussions with your bosses or your supervisors, sales and marketing presentations. Maybe you're giving them, maybe you're listening to them, conversations with coworkers, handling a problem with a coworker, staff handbooks, Zoom meetings, staff get-togethers. All of those things involve reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills, okay? So if you're already in the workplace, think about what kind of literacy skills you're already using at your job. If you aren't already working, what do you imagine might be the literacy skills you need? And again, this kind of gives you some content to talk about for your paragraph. So for me, reading, what are some things I might have to read? Well, absolutely have to read the staff handbook. I also had to read like sick leave policies and pension plan information. There's stuff about COVID procedures. Obviously, I am reading student assignments. I'm reading textbooks. I'm reading emails from coworkers, writing. I'm doing all those things. I am writing lessons, writing emails. What other kind of writing am I doing? Writing notes on marking, writing comments in our database, writing reminders to myself about important job tasks. Okay, speaking. I might be making phone calls, asking the boss a question, having a conversation with a coworker, helping out at a promotional event. Talking to students. Those are all some speaking skills I have to use. Listening. Well, obviously, listening and Listening always involves a little bit of interpreting the boss's instructions, listening to procedures on how to do things. Could be things like working the photocopier, using a database, how to do the presentations for these lessons, how to enter marks, how to use the report card program. There's always all sorts of procedures in most jobs. It's very heavy up front usually. What else? Listening to co-workers, conversation. I don't mean like in a creepy way. I mean like if they're talking, obviously you're listening, right? To student questions and concerns, right? I have to make sure I understand so I know how to help, right? What else? That's what's coming to mind right now. So this is just a quick list of different skills I use in my job. And doing that, I could easily start to use this as kind of my brainstorming notes to help me write my paragraph. So that might be something that you want to think about doing as well. Okay. I'm going to kind of talk a little bit more about some of these skills. I'm specifically going to go deep onto speaking and listening skills just because of the nature of this course. We don't really get the chance to do as much of those as we probably should, or as you would do in a regular classroom. So I'm going to kind of dive a little bit deep to talk about them so you've got some ideas about how you could write about this and how you might actually use these things in the classroom. So workplace speaking skills. These are just some kind of tips on workplace speaking skills. Be clear and concise. Choose your words carefully and be as brief as you can. Avoid overly flowery language. Avoid repetition. Number 2, prepare ahead of time. Know what you're going to say and how you're going to say it before you begin. Oh, look, my favorite word. Brainstorm potential questions, requests for information, and clarification or disagreements. So this is the idea that before you're going to have an important conversation, think about what you're going to say. Think about what questions might come up. Think about what things might be confusing. It's exactly the same kind of things that we do when we're actually kind of doing our writing. Interestingly enough, they're kind of connected. Be mindful of nonverbal communication. Our body language, our gestures, our facial expressions can convey more than words. We are more likely to believe nonverbal signals over spoken words if the two are in disagreement. So if my boss gives me a bunch of orders, like I need you to do this and this and this and this, and I say, okay, yes, sir, and my tone is nice and I'm saying yes, but I roll my eyes at him, ooh, I'm kind of implying either, hey, I'm not going to do this, or hey, I think you shouldn't have told me that. Right. So nonverbal communication, it is so strong, and it's something we need to be mindful of in the workplace. And it actually is part of the curriculum expectations. People don't always realize that, but it is a strong part of how we as humans communicate with each other that it is important to know. Watch your tone. How you say something can be as important as what you see. Tone is especially important during disagreements or conflicts. Be mindful as well about volume, projection, and intonation so they match your goal. So if you're feeling really upset, even if you're being polite and using nice language, if you start saying it really loudly, people may perceive that as being more aggressive or angrier than you realized or inappropriate. And this is one of those things too, the tone, right? Think about if you're talking to your kids or someone else's kids and you're saying, hey, could you please do that? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. And their voice makes it clear how irritated and angry they are that you even asked. So again, their words are saying one thing, their words are good, but their tone is not matching what their words are saying. So practice active listening, which originally I had before here, but I've moved that around. Build your emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence has two kind of parts. One is understanding your own emotions and triggers. Sometimes we've been through things. I mean, we've all had hard times, right? Where we can kind of know ahead of time, hey, you know what? This is a tricky topic for me. So I already can tell I'm going to feel a little bit emotional. So maybe this isn't the best time for this particular conversation. Maybe we could write it down instead. So, like, for example, if you were just going through a death in the family, that may not be the time that you want to have a huge conflict discussion with your coworker because you may be already feeling kind of upset, kind of angry, kind of sad. You might not be able to really hear that person or really process what they're saying. On the other side, the other part of emotional intelligence is understanding other people's emotions and what they're going through and being mindful of that as you're having conversations. I remember one time having a conversation with somebody and they were like, oh, why is so and so so angry and so upset all the time? And I kind of reminded them because they had forgotten that person had just had several people die in their life. And he just forgotten, just slipped right out of his mind. And was like, oh, right, of course, that person still hasn't got over it. And so they're probably feeling sad, but it's coming out as sounding a little bit angrier at work than normal. And so when you know that somebody that you're working with is going through a really difficult time, then maybe you approach things a little more carefully. Maybe some things that aren't as important you put off and talk to later. So emotional intelligence can be a really important aspect of workplace communication skills too. Help develop a positive workplace. Help develop trust, transparency, empathy, and open dialogue. Be able to give and receive constructive criticism. So this is talking about trying to create the kind of work environment that you want to be in by being able to be kind to other people, to, talk openly with somebody if you've got a problem rather than talking with them like behind their back. Being able to acknowledge that, maybe there's some things that you need to do better at the job. If you're talking to somebody about things that you think they need to do better, phrasing it very carefully, right? Sometimes people will say things like, well, I just told the truth. Well, yeah, but you know what? There's nice ways to tell the truth, and there's not so nice ways to tell the truth. And you can either build somebody up or tear them down with how you say your words. And if you want to work in a place where people are respectful of your emotions and your feelings, then obviously we need to be respectful of other people's emotions and feelings too. Okay. Active listening. This is one of those things that I think is kind of so hard to teach because on the outside it's hard to see. Like how do you show somebody you're listening? I know there's kind of these techniques of, well, you look in their eyes and you face your body. It's like, yeah, but you know what? I know perfectly well there's been times where I've looked somebody in the eyes and I had my body facing them and really I was thinking about, oh, I need to do the groceries later on and oh, whatever, right? So it's tricky to teach listening, and I think it's a tricky skill to learn in some ways, like good listening skills, because it's hard to self-monitor, right? We're listening to someone else at the same time as we're listening to our own thoughts. That's actually kind of tricky to do both at the same time. So there are three main aspects to active listening. So we're going to talk about this. A participant in any conversation has two goals. First, they're trying to understand what the other person is communicating, both their overt or their obvious meaning and the emotions behind it, like we talked about. And second, to convey interest, engagement, and caring to the other person. Wow, I would actually think there's a third one, which would be you're thinking about what you're going to say next and what your response is. So this goal about conveying that you're interested and you're engaged, it's not merely because you want to be kind, but it's also because if people don't feel like they're going to be listened to, they stop telling people information, which is one thing in your personal life, but it can be really critical at your work life. People decide, oh, that person just never listens to anything I say. So even though the boss told me something really important today, I'm not going to pass that along. That can really cause problems and come back to kind of bite you. So this is called active listening. It has three main aspects. Cognitive, paying attention to all the information the other person's giving you, both explicit, in other words, the obvious overt information, and implicit, the things like the nonverbal cues, the tone, all those kind of things. Comprehending and integrating that information. Emotional, staying calm and compassionate during the conversation, including managing any emotional reactions like annoyance or boredom, that you might experience. Behavioral, conveying interest and comprehension verbally and non-verbally. So we talked like the obvious one is looking them in the eyes, facing them as they're talking to you, your face kind of looking like you're interested rather than looking like you're bored. Um, those kind of things go a long way to helping people feel like you're listening. Getting good at active listening is a lifetime endeavor. However, even minor improvements can make a big difference in your listening effectiveness. And the next couple slides is going to be a cheat sheet with 9 helpful tips to help you become a better listener. So, what are some ways that we use active listening in the workplace? Well, one, understanding the instructions of your boss. Some bosses are great at giving lots of detailed information about what they want. Other bosses may give you like a very short, um, command or direction of like, hey, I need that financial report. And they're expecting you to know how long the report is, how soon it should be done, how detailed it is, how the tone is, right? It depends on your boss. Comprehending a customer complaint and what they want done. Again, some customers explain themselves really well. Hey, I'm upset because of this and for this reason. What I want you to do is this. Other customers might come in and just start yelling and you don't really know what they're upset about. Communicating with coworkers. That can be in conversations, but also lots of times, especially these days, you may be working as a team. Maybe you're working on a team to do a presentation together. Maybe you're out doing sales together. Maybe you're the salesperson and they're the marketing person, but you're trying to coordinate efforts. Making sure that they understand what you're needing to do and that you understand what they need can be a huge part of being really successful at a job. Deciphering the meaning of sales and marketing people that you deal with. The truth is, this is part of most jobs. Either you're having to deal with them because you're ordering things from them, or they're trying to sell stuff to you, or you yourself are in a job where you're trying to sell stuff or trying to fulfill orders, right? Helping to problem solve conflicts at work between different people. Sometimes a couple of your colleagues may be having kind of a disagreement. Maybe it's a personal disagreement, so you stay out of it, but maybe it's a work disagreement that you're kind of involved in a sense. Like maybe one person wants to rearrange the entire office one way, the other person thinks it's going to be a problem, and you kind of maybe need to help keep the peace, right? Especially if you were, say, the boss, right? Um, Maybe sometimes there can be conflicts about incidents that happened in the past that people haven't really fully resolved, and it's causing a lot of tension in the office. So these are all ways that you can use active listening in the workplace to do a better job, to make more money, and also just to make your workplace a more enjoyable place to be. It's not really a lot of fun to be around someplace that everybody's fighting at. Okay, so these are their active listening tips. We have repeat people's last few words back to them. If you remember nothing else, remember this simple practice that does so much. It makes the other person feel listened to, keeps you on track during the conversation, and provides a pause for both of you to gather your thoughts or recover from an emotional reaction. Number 2, don't put it in your own words unless you need to. Multiple studies have shown that direct repetition works, even though it can feel kind of unnatural. It feels like almost like you're a little kid kind of copying each other. Rephrasing what your interlocutor, it's a fancy word, what your colleague or whatever has said, however, can increase both emotional friction and the mental load on both parties. Use this tool only when you're trying to check your own comprehension and then tell them explicitly, I'm going to put this in my own words to make sure I understand. Now, it's funny because I've always heard it as you rephrase and put it in your own words, but I have definitely seen that as a problem sometimes where sometimes you explain something and maybe you take a little too long time and the other person focuses on one thing you said, but that wasn't the important part to you. The important part to you was some other completely different thing. Or sometimes your coworker or your boss or whoever you're dealing with wasn't really listening 100%. And so they just kind of make a random stab in the dark of what you meant. And it really isn't anything like what you were trying to talk to them about. And that could be super frustrating. Offer nonverbal cues that you're listening, but only if it comes naturally to you. Eye contact, attentive posture, nodding, and other nonverbal cues are important, but it's hard to pay attention to someone's words when you're busy reminding yourself to make regular eye contact. If these sorts of behaviors would require a significant habit change, you can instead let people know at the beginning of a conversation that you're on the non reactive side and ask for their patience and understanding. Okay, this is kind of a new thing. I think this is good if you're in the kind of place where this is considered acceptable. It used to be that people really insisted you have to show these very specific social cues, especially the one about looking people in the eyes. And if you don't, you're being disrespectful, you're being rude, you're not listening, blah, blah, blah. I love the idea that you would be able to say to somebody, hey, you know what? Making eye contact is really terrible for me. I have a hard time with it. So I am listening, but while I'm listening, I'm just going to kind of like make some little notes here, just because that kind of helps me to focus on what you're actually saying. Whereas if I'm trying to focus only on making eye contact, I actually have a harder time listening because I get way too focused on just making eye contact. And where you would think about that is, well, and then I don't want to go into kind of details about that, but just the idea that some people are just more expressive with their bodies in general, and some of us aren't. And forcing people who aren't to try and pretend like they are can mean that all their emotional energy is being used up pretending and not actually getting used to understand what's happening. Okay, pay attention to nonverbal cues. Remember that active listening means paying attention to both the explicit and implicit information that you're receiving in a conversation. Nonverbal cues, such as tone of voice, facial expression, and body language, are usually where the motivation and emotion behind the words is expressed. Now, this is tricky because remember, just like you could be the non reactive one, maybe the person you're talking to is the non reactive one, right? So you kind of have to judge, like, are they just not paying attention to this particular conversation? Or are they generally having a hard time sort of looking somebody in the eye, right? Is their tone always a little bit stiff or a little bit, maybe they always sound a little bit quick and angry? And it's not just me, it's not just this conversation, it's just kind of overall. So you need to be mindful of who they are normally and who they are during that conversation to see if they're acting different. Number 5, ask more questions than you think you need to. I find this one so hard. This both improves the other person's experience of feeling listened to. It ensures that you fully understand their message, and it can serve as a prompt to make sure that important details aren't overlooked. I can't even tell you how many times I thought I understood something. And then when I wandered off to do the work I thought I understood, I went, oh, I now have like 10 more questions I should have asked. So asking too many questions, obviously you have to be mindful of that, but sometimes asking a few more questions to get some details can be really helpful to understanding what's happening at work. Number 6, minimize distractions as much as possible. Again, some workplaces you can do this, some places you don't have a lot of control over that, right? If you're the receptionist at a business, you're kind of the person that deals with all the interruptions. There's not really a way around that. It's important to minimize your internal distractions. If you're preoccupied with another topic, take time to recenter. If you know a conversation might be upsetting, calm yourself as much as possible before going in. So, if you just got news that your parent is sick, and at the same time, you're about to talk to a customer who's upset and wants to talk to you about a customer complaint, you're going to need to take a few minutes before you have that conversation to calm down from the first issue, your parent being sick, before you deal with the next difficult issue. That is super not easy, but it is a really important thing to be able to make sure that the emotions from the one part of your life isn't spilling over to another part of your life to somebody who's not really connected and not really responsible for what happened, right? Number 7, acknowledge shortcomings. If you know going into a conversation that you may be a subpar listener, maybe you're exhausted from dozen intense conversations earlier that day, maybe you're unfamiliar with the topic under discussion or any other reason, let the other person know right away. If you lose your footing during the conversation, like you lose track of your attention or comprehension, just go ahead and tell them that you didn't quite get it and ask the person to repeat themselves. 8, don't rehearse your response while the other person is talking. Take a brief pause after they finish speaking to compose your thoughts. This is going to require conscious effort. We think about 4 times faster than other people talk. So you've still got spare brain power when you're a listener, but try and use it to stay focused and take in as much information as possible. Sometimes we spend so much time thinking about what we're going to say back that we don't really hear what they're trying to say. This is especially true if you're in an argument or a conflict, or if you're already feeling upset about something. Number 9, monitor your emotions. If you have an emotional reaction to something somebody's said, try to slow down the pace of the conversation. Do more repetition. Pay attention to your breathing. You don't want to respond in a way that will cause the other person to disengage, especially at work. And you don't want to fall into the easy defense mechanism of simply tuning that person out because it's not what you want to hear, or rushing into things to try and discount it and argue it away. And again, it goes back to what we talked about, the importance of emotional intelligence, especially at work. It's really important to be able to stay kind of balanced and centered. But sometimes, you know what? Sometimes people are rude at work. A customer may walk in and, call you names, or maybe you're walking around and you're hurt. That's causing you to feel a little bit emotional before anything else even happens. Or maybe somebody starts shouting and you immediately start to feel a little bit scared and overwhelmed, right? So you need to be mindful of your own emotions to help yourself stay in control. So those are all parts of active listening. All right, so here I'm going to kind of go a little more quickly because, a big focus of this course has been reading skills. So what are some things that you might need in the workplace? Maybe you need to understand the staff handbook. Maybe you need to be reading the memo on new procedures on how to ask for sick leave. Maybe you need to comprehend the steps to work a new office machine, or read the procedural memo on how to get started using a new software program. Maybe you need to try and understand an email that was sent out by the head boss, summarizing the new job role changes. Maybe you're reading financial reports and trying to understand them. Reading customer complaint letters and trying to understand what they're upset about so you can kind of fix it. Reading a client request for work they want done and understanding the specifics of what they're asking for. Like sometimes you're in a job where somebody's coming in and saying, I, need catering for 10 people, but we have somebody who's got, milk intolerant, somebody else who's gluten intolerant. We want to make sure it's got an Italian theme. And you're going to have to make sure you understand all those different things and kind of integrate them into one whole when you're creating that for that client. Maybe you need to read the highlights of new laws that impact how you do certain things at work. Or maybe you've got to understand the summary of a presentation you missed. You were at a doctor's appointment. There was an important presentation. You missed it. Somebody hands you the summary. You've got to read it and figure everything out. Here are some writing skills that you might need in a workplace. I'm sure there's things that I haven't listed here, but these are just some of the things that I thought about. Writing up an incident report on an accident could be yours, could be somebody else's. Writing up a letter to request leave to take care of a sick parent or a sick child. Writing up a summary of a meeting you attended. Maybe your boss couldn't get someplace, so they ask you to go in their place and they want you to write up what happened. Filling out a customer complaint form because the suppliers made a mistake and you got to explain what they should have done and said. Writing a financial report and explaining the concept of what's going on. Writing a request for grant funds, or writing a proposal for new job equipment and trying to explain why you think it's important. You're trying to persuade somebody, doing persuasive writing here. Writing up a list of job duties for a new hire. Taking the minutes at a staff meeting, right? You don't really necessarily write every single thing the person says. You're kind of summarizing what they're saying and writing it down. Maybe you're writing up a note or a poster on how to fix the photocopier when it dies, so people don't keep coming to you to fix it every 5 minutes. Maybe you've got to create a poster. You're in the health and safety committee. You need to create a poster to explain the new COVID policies in your workplace. Maybe somebody you know is looking for a job and they've asked you to write up a letter of recommendation. Or you've got a colleague who's having a hard time and you're writing a letter or a little note to them. Maybe you create ads and you're writing up an idea to your boss about a new ad campaign. Or maybe you've created a new software program that you really want the workplace to use. And so you're writing up a proposal to the higher ups about why you think it should be a good idea to use this program. There's all sorts of times where we use writing in the workplace. These are just some examples. And a lot of these are things that are very similar to the types of things we've done in the course, right? We've written up letters. We've written up summaries. There's things about opinions. We've done opinions, right? Okay. How do these literacy skills affect you in the workplace? Well, obviously, no one job is going to need all these skills, right? So maybe you want to think about either the job you have or a job you want to have, right? Right now, maybe you're finishing high school, but you're hoping to become an auto mechanic or a nurse or whatever. What are some communication skills you would need at that job? How would better reading and writing skills help you do your job better? What about better speaking and listening skills? How would better skills in those 4 areas help affect yourself? Could it mean a raise, a promotion, more job satisfaction, less customer complaints? How would your having better skills help your clients or your customers? How would it help your coworkers? How would it affect them? How might it affect your immediate supervisor or the head boss? How would better skills affect the suppliers, the people you deal with and order things from? How would it affect other businesses you deal with? Maybe you work in teamwork with some other businesses and better skills could affect them as well. Okay. So this was sort of brainstorming on a big scale. Now I'm kind of turning it back to, hang on a second. Sorry, I talk a lot in the afternoon, and sometimes my voice begins to go on me a little bit. Just like any other paragraph for this journal, we've done some brainstorming. You're going to think of what are some ideas that you want to talk about, okay? There's so much there to choose from. Start off with your topic sentence. What is your overall opinion or your ideas on how literacy skills can help you be more successful in the workplace? And you get to decide what you mean by successful. Does that mean you get the promotion? Does that mean you get along better with your boss or your coworkers? What does it mean? You decide. Try to give at least 4 or 5 ways better skills could help you to be more effective in your workplace. And then write, this is wrong, saying a second, concluding sentence that rephrases or restates the opening topic sentence. For some reason, my brain cannot think of how to spell this. My apologies. I'm going to take spell check real quick. Oh, hang on. Oh, okay. Sorry, I decided to do the whole thing. I apologize. Okay, hang on. Where was I? Okay, sorry. I don't know why I kept wanting to add an extra syllable in there. Okay, so you want to write a concluding sentence that rephrases or restates the opening topic. So this is only 5 sentences, but you do have to do a rough draft and a good draft. So just like always, you need to go through the revision steps. Look at your content, look at your organization, think about your sentence variety. Is there a better way to say things? Have you used interesting words? And punctuation. Check your spelling, check your capitalization, punctuation, all those kind of things. So when I look at your rough copy and I look at your good copy, it should be really obvious that there are some differences, okay? So not just one or two tiny little things that I can barely see. I should see some very big, obvious differences, things you crossed out, places where you changed a word, places where you changed punctuation or fixed a spelling error, okay? So I'm gonna go on a little bit. As I've been marking things, I've noticed some confusion in the area of how to write compound or complex sentences, okay? So the biggest thing is you cannot write a compound sentence or a complex sentence really by just joining two simple sentences with a comma, okay? That's a punctuation error. Two simple sentences that are complete can be joined by a semicolon. Here is our semicolon. See this? Try to make it bigger. Right? Looks like a comma with a little dot on top. I'm gonna make it a nice bright color here. There we go. Okay. Now, you can also join two simple sentences using a comma after the first one and then a coordinating conjunction to connect the second sentence. And that creates a compound sentence. Most of you know how to do this, but just kind of quickly going over. There are 7 main coordinating conjunctions: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. The acronym for that is often called fanboys. So here are some examples. I want to go see Grandma, for this Christmas is her first without Grandpa. I love to go to the movies, or I could also go out to dinner. I do not want to go skiing, nor do I wish to go skating. John played hockey in the winter, and he played baseball in the summer. I hoped to go to the concert, but I haven't saved enough money. He refused to do his homework, so his parents turned off the internet. The other one is the word yet. I don't find that's used as often as it used to be, so I'm just going to leave that one for right now. Okay. Ooh, all right. Well, I'm going to quickly erase answers here. Sorry, I forgot I did this in my other class. I can't wait to eat dinner so I can go to the movie. Is that correct or incorrect? Which one is it? Now I've circled correct. Okay, why? Why is that correct? I've got the comma, and this isn't the word and, but there are other coordinating conjunctions, right? And so is one of them. So I've got the comma and my coordinating conjunction, and then I have my next sentence, so it's good to go. She loves going shopping. She is excited to pick up new clothes. And you can see I've picked incorrect. Why though? Why is this incorrect? Why isn't it okay? It looks an awful lot like this one. What's the difference? The big difference is I don't have a coordinating conjunction there. And because of that, it's no good. I can't, not no good. I can't use that, right? Now, there are two ways to fix that. I could just add a coordinating conjunction, and she's excited to pick up new clothes. Or I could also substitute and put a semicolon there. We talked about that. That would work too. All right. He had waited all summer to get on the school football team. He could barely sleep the night before tryouts. Is this correct? There's no coordinating conjunction, but it's a semicolon. Semicolons don't need a coordinating conjunction. All they need is for it to be a complete sentence on both sides. So we can quickly check, is it? Well, there's a subject, he, had waited as our verb, so that's our complete sentence, and it's a complete thought. He had waited all summer to get on the school football team. That's legitimate. And then over here, we've got our subject, he could barely sleep. That's our verb. And the night before. Yep, that's legitimate too. So that is correct. First, we moved to a new town, and later we moved back to the big city. Is this correct, or is it not correct? It's correct. We've got that conjunction and. And is probably one of the most common conjunctions you're going to see The other ones would be like so, or sometimes or but. Those are the most common ones. Okay, complex sentences. So the previous slides covered how to correctly join the two sentences together to create a compound sentence. The two sentences have to be complete sentences that could have stood on their own and just ended with a period. So let me stress, that means they have to have a subject and a predicate, which has a verb, and express a complete thought. Okay. If it sounds like somebody got cut off partway through their sentence and it doesn't quite make sense, that is not a complete sentence. Okay. So this is really important as we talk about creating complex sentences. They're trickier because with a complex sentence, you're trying to join one complete sentence with an incomplete sentence. So compound is two complete, complex is one complete, one incomplete. Okay. And the incomplete part is it does have a subject and predicate, but it doesn't form a complete thought. So in order to avoid confusion, when we're talking about trying to create larger sentences and the little sections in between, we usually call those little sections a clause so we don't get confused what we're talking about. Okay, so there are two types of clauses. There's a dependent clause and there is an independent clause. Okay, every clause has to have a subject, noun or pronoun that's the topic, and it has to have a predicate, verb plus other words that tell what is happening in that sentence. Okay, all of them. If it doesn't have those, it is not a clause, basically. An independent clause can stand on its own as a sentence. A dependent clause has a subordinating conjunction that creates an incomplete thought or a clause that needs another clause to complete it. So some examples of dependent clauses are statements like this. Unless he brings the money, if she says yes, before you put in the eggs, once you finish the car, since you're already mad. Now, you can hear these don't quite sound right. The thought isn't finished. There's more to come. It's dependent on the next clause to complete the thought. So now we'll look at the same sentences where we've added an independent clause to try and finish it. Okay. Unless he brings the money, I can't buy the groceries. If she says yes, I am going to marry that girl. Before you put in the eggs, make sure the pan is hot. Once you finish the car, we need to mow the lawn. Since you're already mad, I might as well tell you I'm the one who broke the vase. Okay, just because of how I did that, I put the dependent clauses first, but they can also go at the end, okay? These sentences now you can hear, they make more sense. The thought is finished, okay? When it only had the dependent clause, it was like someone had just kind of stopped in the middle of talking, all right? Now, there are commas separating these two, but keep in mind it's separating an independent clause from a dependent clause, and that is the difference. It's not two independent clauses, it's one dependent and one independent, and the comma is helping to convey that. So here are some examples of subordinating conjunctions, and I can see I'm running out of time, so I might not get through all of this. I am just going to very quickly grab a little star, because if I don't, I sometimes tend to forget what I've done later. Apologies. It is a thing. Okay. So now I know we're going to start tomorrow with talking about subordinating conjunctions, and we'll try and get this confusion cleared up about how we use commas. Okay. Thank you so much for coming out today and listening, and we will meet up tomorrow and talk about coordinating conjunctions, and our new unit 4. All right, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.